Purim this year came just after the war with Iran began, thus setting the jarring context that Purim takes place in Persia. And today, our Haftarah transports us to the Persian period yet again. I love history too, so I'm copying you, Menachem Mendel, because you always bring us the history. I was like, I want to bring some history today. It's easy to forget that King Ahasuerus, usually considered nothing more than a fairy tale king and a folk tale, and a lot of it is a folk tale, but he's mentioned specifically as a historical figure in the book of Ezra. It says in Ezra chapter 4, verse 6, and in the reign of Ahasuerus, at the start of his reign, they drew up an accusation against the inhabitants of Judah and Jerusalem. Ezra is recounting how the king of Persia at that time, Ahasuerus, Xerses I, who reigned between Darius I and Artaxerxes I, was one who supported attacks on Jews returning from exile, unlike his predecessor and unlike his successor. The drawing up an accusation against the inhabitants of Judah and Jerusalem to legalize and condone attacks upon them, thus becoming Haman influencing the king's decree. Remember that a lot of money for the king's treasury was involved in the book of Esther. Make these attacks the law of the land unto the most distant provinces of Persia. To be clear, what I'm suggesting is while the book of Esther is largely consisting of a folktale, Ezra, from the Persian period, recounts that there was a king, Ahasuerus, Xerxes I, who actually issued a decree that Jews may be attacked unto the reaches of the Persian provinces, unlike his predecessor and successor, and involving a lot of money as well. The period of roughly 450 to 430 BCE was a very fragile time in Jewish history. Our prophet Malachi lived during the Persian period, several decades after the Jewish people returned from exile in Babylon. While the Second Temple had been rebuilt, the initial religious enthusiasm had faded into a period of social and economic hardship. Though the Persian king Cyrus, a hero to our people, had granted our people a right of return from exile previously, and while one leg of his impact on the Jewish people was a right to live Jewishly in our own land, the other leg of his empire was catastrophic levels of taxation upon his subjects, and hence the obsession with the treasury in the book of Esther. Decades later, during the period of Malachi, Ezra and Nehemiah, the people were disillusioned because all three exist together. The people were disillusioned because the glorious prosperity promised by earlier prophets hadn't fully materialized. There was, partly due to the excessive burden of tax collection and tribute, widespread corruption among the priesthood, and a neglect of social justice, particularly oppression of workers and their wages. Malachi famously predicted a messenger who would prepare the way before a final day of judgment, possibly appropriating things from Zoroastrian Persian civilization. In Christian tradition, this is interpreted as John the Baptist. In Jewish tradition, it becomes Elijah, Eliyahu HaNavi at the Seder, where we open the door, invite God to pour out his wrath upon the people in a day of judgment, bringing cosmic judgment, and thus paving a way for the messianic messenger to arrive. Hence today is Shabbat Hagadol, and we read the Haftarah because of that announcement in preparation for the Seder. Malachi's work marks the very end of the age of Hebrew prophecy. His contemporaries' works, Ezra and Nehemiah, are not in Nevi'im, which I sometimes forget and have probably made a mistake about, but are in Ketuvim. Ezra's work is far more positive about this period, as Ezra is a priest and celebrates the return of temple sacrifice and religious law as the law of the land. Nehemiah was King Artaxerxes' cupbearer, then appointed governor of Judea. So of the three sides of the balance of powers of our country for 1,000 years, of the Jewish state, the balance of powers, unlike legislative, judicial, and executive, if there even is a judicial and a legislative anymore, the three balance of powers was priest, political leader, and prophet, So Ezra is the priest, and Nehemiah is the political leader, and that leaves Malachi the prophet. And thus only Malachi of the three is in the book of prophets. Malachi savages the political and priestly leadership, far from the celebratory tone of the other two, which are understandable and relatable. Malachi's tone is urgent and critical. The rampant social injustice, the turn toward other peoples, and economic oppression are due to corruption among our leaders and capitulation by our people. The time of enormous widespread corruption in our leaders and capitulation by our people, it rings very strongly on this Shabbat to me, with continuation of the Persian theme, which really ends the Tanakh. I'm going to add to this, hope it's okay, something I just found fascinating this week. There was an article in Vanity Fair about the war in Iran, and it started like this. Last weekend, Iran, one of the world's oldest, most storied civilizations, was attacked by two countries, the U.S., which adorably is about to celebrate its 250th anniversary, and Israel, which is younger than Liza Minelli. I didn't know she was that old. I mean, really. Liza was born in 1946, so obviously the reference is to 1948. I was reading one of our members, Ari Stein, who's now at Yale and has a really amazing Substack for many years, and I read it. He wrote a Substack piece this week who said, okay, how old is Iran based on this dating? Well, the date worthy of their national yearly commemoration is 1979. It marks the emergence of the regime which rules Iran today, the one founded by Ruhollah Khomeini after his return from exile. That makes Iran 47 years old. So Iran is younger than John Hamm. Okay, but notice it said Persian civilization, but it doesn't say Jewish civilization, it says the Israeli state. So is there an Iranian civilization? Because it says Iranian civilization, not Persian, sorry. And remember, Iran is connected to the word Aryan. But if you go back, so you go back to the Pahlavis in 1925, or go further to the Qajars, who were ethnic Turks, or to their founding Shah, who was born in what is today Azerbaijan, or go back to the Safavids, who were ethnic Kurds, or go back to the Mongols, who were none of the above, or go to the long period of Arab-Muslim conquest and rule before that, just like Judea during the same conquest and the same displacement. But now all that doesn't matter. Iranian civilization is obviously equivalent to Persian civilization, and these occupations and rulings and expulsions don't affect a people who once again speak Farsi and have deep roots in their land. But Israel's civilization, younger than Liza Minnelli.